Hello and welcome to another episode of Express Mobility, the Financial Express. Today, we are going to talk about a very important and upcoming subject, electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, which is another area of mobility worldwide. Today, we have with us Mr. Mark Henning, who is the Managing Director of AutoFlight Europe, a company which is working on eVTOL. And today, we'll discuss and try to understand with him what does exactly the future hold for us. First of all, welcome, Mr. Mark, and thank you for joining us. So to begin with, I would like to understand with you, the story behind the inception of AutoFlight.
Yeah, so AutoFlight was created in 2017, 2018 as an international company by my boss, Tian Yu, who's located in Shanghai. And his vision was to bring all the advances on which he had worked on the years before in electric propulsion, especially battery and electric motor technology, but also modern computing technology into manned air transportation. And what we're working on for the company itself is to work on, as you has called it, an electrical vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, applying all the things which were learned before into a real product, which we want to develop and certify as our first product, which is called Prosperity One, in front of the certification authorities worldwide, starting here in Europe with EASA.
Okay. And how much investments have you put in the company till date? Because this is a very expensive affair. And since the companies, the industry is quite nascent, it also means a lot of challenges for you to bring in and convince people to back this project. Is it the case?
Yeah, so the investments, aircraft development per se are of course a little bit more expensive as if we would develop a motorcycle or something like that. Aircraft design and aircraft certification demands a lot of precision and a lot of detailed work, and that means we have long times and we have big teams, big international and big interdisciplinary teams working on the development. So aircraft and our aircraft, as all the other aircraft, are developed in what we call phases. So you have a concept phase, you have a definition phase, a development phase, production investment phase, and of course then a serial production phase, which is in parallel to what we call in-service support phase, as soon as we start producing and delivering aircraft to our end customers. So we are currently still in an early phase, which we call the concept definition phase. In that concept definition phase, we have currently received and organized fundings, also from investors, international investors, of an order of magnitude of $100 million, which we are currently using to freeze the configuration of the aircraft. Freezing the configuration means the requirement is to carry 4 occupants, which is 1 pilot and up to 3 passengers, with a certain amount of luggage, over a distance of 150 to 200 kilometers, at a cruise speed of about 180 kilometers per hour. If you, sorry for the units, so we're thinking in kilometers per hour here. So that is now the concept phase. And in that concept phase, you're spending money to freeze the configuration. And in our case, we are very lucky that we have a rapid prototyping capability in Shanghai. So our colleagues working in Shanghai built last year what we call the proof of concept aircraft number 1. And this year already the second aircraft, which is called the proof of concept aircraft number 2, we called it POC1 and POC2. So that is an investment by the company, but these aircraft are built in full scale. So that means they are already sized in about 1,500 kilogram class to carry these 4 occupants over that distance. So you build 2 full-scale aircraft to test there, and this is the investment which we are currently doing.
Okay. So, coming to the area that you're focusing on, it's a very new and a nascent area. It's a niche segment, especially given the fact that there are no policies in place. There is no infrastructure that is required per se. For example, electric vehicles require proper lane marking, particular set of standards and definition. But over here, without any policies or laid down rules, how difficult it is to work over here. I mean, how do you define or work around international standards? Because if I'm not wrong, there are no policies in place anywhere globally.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We are lucky in Europe, EASA, so the European Safety Agency for certifying aircraft, they have built up the last years a rulemaking environment which has produced a handful of documents which were what we call certification specifications for vertical takeoff and landing, as well as electrical flying. So in EASA, they are quite advanced with the regulations, what to be done on the aircraft itself. So you have three pillars in principle to develop to have this kind of transportation possibility. You need an aircraft, so the certification requirements for the aircraft are there. You need a second pillar, which is the ground infrastructure. We call that vertiports, so the airports from which these VTOLs can operate. And thirdly, what you need is an air traffic management system, which can cope with a dense traffic, a much more dense traffic than what we know today in general aviation, over the cities as well as intracity in intracity. So EASA has released good documents for the certification of the aircraft, and they have released drafted documents for the vertiports, and they have released drafted documents for the air traffic management. This is only in Europe. So the US and other areas in the world, you're totally right, they have not yet frozen certification requirements for this kind of business. But we think that the work with EASA is going to be good enough as a baseline, also then to talk in bilateral agreements and with all the other authorities worldwide.
Correct.
So we are in good shape here.
So, given that as you mentioned, it is still developing in other parts of the world. So, who will be your target audience and the market for for your products? Where do you see the target audience and market for this?
The most important application areas for vertical takeoff and landing vehicles with this short range, comparatively short range, is within mega cities. So we think that we and all our competitors, which are working at the same time as we are doing, and we think that the huge cities are going to be the first applications where we do that. This is of course true in the US. This is true in some cities in Latin America. This is of course true in Asia, in India, as well as in China and other Asian countries, where you have big cities. Much bigger cities than we know here in Europe. So we think that these markets with the big cities are going to be the first markets where we're going to apply that and where we're going to have operations in the near future.
Correct. So India is a potential market for you.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay. So would it be more of retail customers, or do you see this this application will be target towards the B2B or fleet management companies?
We are convinced that the beginning is going to be fleet operators. We call them airlines. They're going to be equivalent to airlines because they need a certification to be an operating organization to operate aircraft in selling the service to end customers, which are paying for that. So commercial operations. So that's going to be the bulk of the customers are going to be airlines. But of course, as a private person, if you have a license to fly this kind of aircraft, of course, you should be able to also buy that aircraft for personal use. So this is going to be in the second step coming. In the beginning, for sure, it's going to be big institutional organizations like airlines.
So one of the other concerns that I think people would have is in terms of safety, both passive and active safety. When we talk about electric vehicles, incidents like thermal runaway has been a cause of concern for vehicles that are running on ground. We have seen incidents happening with the best of the world, Teslas, Nissan, or even the two-wheelers and three-wheelers in India. So how do you, what are the safety components incorporated both in active and passive to, what do you say, convince the end user to be that he's safe when using the vehicle?
Yeah, so there are two elements to that. Of course, as a manufacturer, it has to be our interest to develop and build the most safety aircraft you can imagine. Because of the high numbers of aircraft which are going to be built and delivered to customers, we have to have a very high number of safety as a matter of principle. On the other hand side, the authorities demand the same level of safety from our aircraft category. With 4 people sitting in there, as a big aircraft, which are we call them Part 25 aircraft, like a Boeing 777 or an Airbus A350. So the same level of safety requirements, which is for these big aircraft, is applied by the certification authorities now also for our small little aircraft. So that gives you an indication. The batteries are of special consideration from safety point of view. You're absolutely right. Flying an aircraft is safe by definition, but the batteries come with their own specific issues, as you said, thermal runaway.
Challenges.
So super stringent requirements to certify the battery systems on our aircraft. This is true for us as for the others. There's a standard, I can give you the number, the DO311A, it's called. Yeah, you can look that up. That specifies what you have to do to get the battery certified from safety point of view. So, for instance, you have to test in a real test the full battery. So, in our case, it's a 500 kilogram battery pack, which is of course divided in individual components in there. You have to burn 2 cells at the same time, and you have to show that these cells don't cause a thermal runaway and a chain reaction within the battery system to all the others. Because in an aircraft, not like in a car, you know, the car, when you have an incident, you stop and you get out of the car, and if the car burns, it's very bad, but at least nobody's hurt. In an aircraft, you just cannot stop. You have to continue to fly. And this has been shown by tests that if you really burn 2 cells at the same time in the full battery pack, that the whole battery system stays intact, and then you have a certain period of time until the aircraft can land safely at a safe position without hurting people in the aircraft or hurting or jeopardizing people on the ground from safety point of view. So this is a non-negotiable safety capability in electrical aviation, which is applied to us and to as a standard to the industry.
Okay. So, coming to competition, you mentioned that, there are many players who are looking to enter this field. I personally know of at least 2 or 3 companies in India or startups in India, which have, which are planning to enter the same segment that as you are. Of course, I mean, you have been able to demonstrate your first vertical takeoff and landing capabilities. So there is still a gap. Coming to, the final launch or demonstration. By when do you see AutoFlight be coming ready with the product?
So 2 things. I mentioned the POC aircraft in the beginning. We are flying them as we're speaking. So we've flown more than 200 flight tests up to now. By chance, last week and this week, we did demonstrations to potential investors and customers in our Shanghai test area. So that is running already. The real serial product, which can be sold to customers for real operation, are going to be developed the next few years. The plan is to certify with EASA until end of 2025 to deliver the first aircraft, certified aircraft, in 2026 to potential customers. So this is our time frame, which we're planning to fulfill.
Okay. And do you see, there could be an acceleration towards your plan, given the fact that, the market, the overall market, especially in the electric vehicle segment with new battery chemistries, faster development times, do you see that there is a possibility that, there will be faster to market iteration for AutoFlight?
We don't plan to be faster than this, because this is fast as light, as we say.
Okay.
No, but, there's no price for the company which is first delivering there. That is cool. So I welcome and I congratulate everybody who's faster than us, really. For us, that schedule is good. And at a certain point in time, when a new technology can be brought into our product, we will of course do that. And we're looking for that to get these higher capabilities from batteries, especially, and to get them also to improve the performance of our platform. But to answer the question, we don't have to be faster than what we're doing now.
Okay. And I just from my understanding, the acceptance for commercial vehicle deliveries or transport of logistics or goods will be the first segment to accept the eVTOL platform, compared to convincing human passengers to take their flight. Do you see that that initially the first set of customers will be from the B2B logistics space?
The first, it is, flying in an eVTOL is like flying in a helicopter or in a small aircraft, like the Cessna or Piper, these aircraft we know there. It's not different. The difference is it is much quieter, it's more comfortable, and it's by factors less expensive than in the conventional aircraft flying there. So that's why we think that an acceptance is going to be much easier for the public, for the society, as compared to this conventional aircraft which we're speaking about. And yes, of course, in the beginning, B2B, it's going to be business travelers using that because they are going to gain from the shorter travel times end to end, as compared to when you could do your leisure flight. It's nice and it's cool, but in the beginning, it's going to be B2B for sure. Yeah.
And compared to pricing, I mean it all boils down to the cost that the customer pays. Do you see that with electrification, the customer would gain significantly compared to say using your traditional helicopters for short distance travel? The pricing would be for the end consumer comparatively cheaper.
Yeah, absolutely. We're calculating a factor of 5 to be a factor of 5 cheaper than a light helicopter with our aircraft.
Okay.
That is the target.
Okay, and coming to the India angle, do you have any kind of synergies or development partners or investors from India, or are you reaching out to the Indian customer base?
We have not yet any contracts and not any agreements which are officially to be announced with Indian organizations, being it investors or being it customers. But this is going to come for sure in the near future. As you know, you're a very important country and a very big country.
Right. So, I was just going to elaborate on that. A lot many multinationals have development, manufacturing, or even R&D center, given the country India's progress in manufacturing as well as the IT sector. So, do you plan to have any kind of presence in India?
This is going to be developed over the years for sure. Something like that, it's such a huge market. It's so important that we are going to have a look into that and going to see, how over the time we can build this kind of capabilities up also in India. Yeah.
And I'm almost done with my questions. Coming to the supply chain, since it's a very niche segment, how do you build a supply chain over here? Because it's not as if you just go to a typical supplier and you get all the parts. If I'm not wrong, every part has to be customized and designed for your platform. So how do you work around the supply chain over there? Or how do you create the supply chain?
Yeah, so this aircraft is not different than any other aircraft which is certified. So that means the full supply chain, each and every part, which you procure and which you install and integrate in serial production into your product, has to be followed and has to fulfill very stringent quality requirements. So this is true for Airbus A350 as well as a Bell helicopter and as well as for our aircraft. So there are very stringent requirements, and that means that it has to be carefully built up time over time to have a fully transparent and fully controlled supply chain on all parts, going it down to the smallest washer or a connector, or it's the software or it's the electrical motors. So there's no compromise from safety point of view by the authorities in this kind of business.
Okay.
So
and
yeah.
So lastly, coming to the pricing, what would be the tentative pricing for a vehicle, for an individual or a retail customer, given the fact that, if I'm not wrong, in the private, in a personal use segment, a lot many big businessmen would like to own or have one of these vehicles in their garage so that they can cut down on shorter travel time. So, coming down to the cost, is there any target price?
Yes, there's a target price for the market, of course. And as usual, it depends. So it means, if you buy 100 aircraft, you're going to get a different price as compared to if you buy one aircraft. But the order of magnitude is going to be about $1 million when we have a proper serial production running for customers as a price per aircraft. That is the plan which we want to fulfill.
Okay. And any additional thoughts you would like to share for the Indian market, or or your perception about how do you see this segment growing?
As I said, the one thing is what we can control ourselves. What we're really working on is the aircraft, but we need the other two pillars, which is the air traffic management, which is not so difficult because at the end it's electronics and radios. But what we really need to have countries and municipalities and politicians working on is the this infrastructure on ground. You need vertiports, and you need them, at intelligent locations within the big cities. Without these vertiports, the whole thing is useless. So yeah, you will have the individual who has enough place on his on the roof of his house, because the aircraft is not heavy. It can land on proper roofs, it can land. But you need proper vertiports where normal human beings from out of our society can go there. They arrive there by taxi or by bus, and then they get into the aircraft, and then they can fly the next 100 kilometers on the other side of the city in no time, as compared to road transportation or a train transportation. So we really need the infrastructure on ground, not only here around the airports, but also in the cities. And this is what we have to work on, and together with the political sides to get that, to make it happen.
Okay. So basically supporting policies, infrastructure, and the will of and the support from air traffic management. So already out of the three, you have got one. Air traffic management services already there. So it's just the will of the policies and the necessary infrastructure.
Yeah. Yes.
So thank you, Mark, for joining us at Express Mobility. I think it was an insightful conversation around the future of eVTOL. I look forward to seeing more demonstrations from your company, and hopefully some announcements relating to India soon.
Yeah. Hey, thank you very much for having me. It was an honor and a pleasure to have this exchange with you. Thank you very much, and looking forward for the follow-up. Yeah.